But enough of that. We are now heading finally into the map of Busan. We'll see where we start things out with. We've got Downtown, Mecha Base, and Sanctuary, and this is a decent map that's shaking things up a decent amount.
Yeah, it's looking like we may just be starting on Downtown. To speak of maps that really shake things up, some really interesting high ground in this map. Opens up a lot of flexibility for team compositions. Both teams, though, at present, hovering on a GOAT-style team composition, that 3 tanks, 3 supports.
And just to clear things up as well on Talon Esports, if you're noticing who Aquila is, that is actually Bazzy from last season. Not to be confused with the Bazzy that's just joined the Overwatch League.
Yeah.
That's probably why he actually renamed, but there you go.
And both teams now out the gates. Like we said, that GOATs both going forward with the Lucio should be button heads pretty quickly.
Not the standard GOATs you're used to either. This one features the Winston primarily, so it's still 3 tanks, still 3 triple support, but differently.
Yeah, Blue getting that charge up quickly enough to dispatch of his opponent. This is a little unusual to get these kills in so quickly before ultimates come up. It's going to be a nice quick win for Nova, pushing it forward now, getting a couple of extra kills to secure some ground. Now they're going to move back and capture the point.
The timing's really important here as well because they managed to clean up a lot of members on the Talon Esports side, didn't lose any members of their own, and then got back to the point as it was opening up. So waiting for the perfect moment to strike to make sure you can win the team fight and then get the maximum efficiency on Cat.
Haven't necessarily snowballed it though. You see that ultimate coming up for Persia. He's going to have to pop it soon. Just barely gets in the nick of time and 1 drops to boot. This is a good response from Talon after losing the opening engage. Very quickly dispatching of Nova before they can charge up ultimates. That's going to be a real wash in favor of Talon.
And this is the part where you expect Nova as well. They did jump in quite early with Nexus, but he went down super quick. And for Talon Esports, finding that opening pick, being able to then go into their own Transcendent, charging that up quicker than Oyo on the other side, that's a game-winning play for Talon. That's going to give them the ability to recap.
That being said, that is the ultimates now used for Talon, and the pendulum's kind of swinging back the other way here for Nova. They're wasting no time, straight in, popping the rally as well. Oyo nearly up on that Transcendence. Blue's looking for an angle. There he goes, commits into it, catches a good chunk. Now the collapse. They find 4 of them. The self-destruct doesn't connect out of Crazy S, but it doesn't matter. They have dealt the blow back, and they're going to get the point back under their control.
And most importantly, they managed to get this Graviton Surge before Haru had a chance to sound barrier. He was actually on 99% when he went down. So for Talon Esports, despite having 4 ultimates, they couldn't quite survive the grab. They couldn't quite see Blue's positioning. Gogora didn't have the defense matrix in the right position to counter that grab out. So Talon, unfortunately, for this third fight, they didn't go down.
But again, the pendulum has swung back the other way. Talon come in with the advantage, and now this is their grab. Restia does have a sound barrier, knows better than to use it though. Gogora's mech placement just too perfect to scoop up the 3 plus the mech, and the cleanup is easy from there. And you look at how many ultimates they've preserved. This is what's going to flip the game.
And so much bigger this combo is the Diva self-destruct and the Graviton Surge with Winston as your main tank instead of the Reinhardt on both sides, because what you get is not the Reinhardt with the big shield blocking the self-destruct. A Winston's not going to be able to do that for very long with the bubble if he has the bubble available. So a lot of connection on that self-destruct.
Nova knew better than to use those ultimates, but let's see if they can get mileage out of them here. Already popping the sound barrier and the rally. That's all they've got to play with. That's good out of Haru, and they've forced the Transcendence from Persia. But Talon still have other tools they can rotate into, can stall this one out with Villeneuve's Primal Rage. Has to pop it now as Nova starts to come up on some ultimates. A Weak has found some kills. That gives him his own grab now, and Blue still has not committed his own. One's now down as well. Talon just a slight numbers advantage, now a bigger numbers advantage as they pop Restia, and it's looking like they're going to use those support tools. They're going to use the Primal Rage and hold on to this fight while Nova charge up their ultimates.
And that's a massive problem for Nova Esports as well, because they had the Graviton ready to go before Weak had his. They got Haru down, didn't get the chance to use that sound barrier. Persia did counter it with the Transcendence. All they needed to do was wait out the Transcendence, get the Graviton Surge down as the Transcendence was ending. That might have been a team fight win for Nova, and this could be their last fight now.
I like the positioning here, very aggressive. Nova forced to commit far away from the point. Double grab out now. Self-destruct from Gogora again hits true. And in this position as well, Nova have had to send someone around the side just to dive for the point, give them a snowball's chance in hell. But it is not going to be much more than that. In fact, melting very quickly is Nexus. Even with that Primal Rage, Oyo gets popped. Now, Talon well in control, still with these support tools available. Crazy S going to go down pretty quickly on the Wrecking Ball, and the Doomfist out from 1. It is all just a last hurrah. I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. Really making it count though, but no kills to come through, and Talon are going to hold on to it, secure our first point of Busan.
Rare kill feed there, by the way. Nexus with the rocket punch onto, I can't even remember who it was, Gora maybe. It's one of those weird things you see when a diva goes down. It's somebody else that used an ability. But point there being, I think we looked back to a previous fight where Graviton Surge was an advantage for Nova Esports. They did get Haru down reasonably early, 6 versus 5. All they needed to do was wait out the Transcendence or play the Grav into the Transcendence, convert the kills from there. And that's basically how they would have retaken the point, because they were a little bit too slow in the uptake in the Grav versus Grav war. A week got the upper hand there against Nova Esports. And that's all she really said. I mean, after that, it was just cleanup.
You got to compliment Nova, winning the fights that they ought to be winning. The unfortunate thing is there was that big momentum shift partway through. Nova needs to not let that happen again, or better yet, be the ones making that momentum shift.
The other momentum shift that we've seen in terms of compositions is the fact that now Ryan's being played for Sanctuary, but more so than that, Zenyatta has come into the fold in this current meta over something like Ana, over something like Moira, which is the classic goats that we don't see anymore.
Both teams just going to scuffle around the point. Nova are more around the point itself, but that gives Talon potential to move for some high ground.
Just waiting for the 3 seconds to elapse here before Nova, or rather for Talon Esports to really contest the point.
They've got to get on it, and here they go, diving straight in, not wasting any time, but Nova do have the benefit of being more set up. Still both teams on either side of the drum, just looking for the way in. Villeneuve moving forward, trying to get into the thick of it.
Nexus
Needs to
low.
be careful. One's low. Nexus is the first to drop. Restia, 2 low as well. One, he's barely stayed alive, but they didn't answer any kills back despite Villeneuve getting low. And this is huge for Talon, getting that fight win and also charging up the ultimates that they didn't need to expend.
You can see the posturing there from Talon Esports as well. It was Villeneuve trying to get into the face of Nexus, waiting for the right moment to strike, and then the coordination, the bubble coming through from a weak, the stun coming through from a queer. That's all you really need to be able to do to get Nexus down early. Once you have the Reinhardt secured, everybody else on Nova Esports is free pickings.
Nova, they're going to have a bit of a tough one ahead of them. The rally out from Akila to top off the fight, or start off the fight rather. Nova looking for an angle.
That's a
shatter. Doesn't quite connect though, handily blocked. Now Oyo commits in with a Transcendence, and Talon are the ones taking the hurt now. They're a little bit lean on ultimates. We have a sound barrier available out of Restia to match Haru's one. Villeneuve's now the first casualty, and Blue coming up on a grab.
That's
a
a cap.
Weak does commit his one first, but you're right, the cap the way of Nova, and that grab from a Weak has not got the mileage it needed. Crazy S finds Akila with the self-destruct, and now even better yet, Blue can preserve this grab as they just frag out the rest of Talon.
And worst of all for Talon Esports, because they let the cap go so early, this is an extra 16, 17, now 18% that Nova Esports would have just only started to get towards. And for Talon Esports, just a little bit more deficit than they'd be happy with. They had an ultimate advantage, but they couldn't secure the fight.
Oyo already coming back up on another Transcendence as well, keeps him even with Persia. But you've got to say, that grab is the big lead here. This is that momentum shift we needed.
And watching Persia as well, the Transcendence is going to be very important here. If you can get the Transcendence up in time, the grab's not going to do a lot.
Blue does take a bit of hurt though, throws the grab in. I think he got eaten. That's bad news, Bears. As now the fight opens out in earnest. Double Transcendence, double rally as well, which means Villeneuve with this Earth Shatter. And now Nexus going to be able to match soon if they're not careful. The stun connected, but the Shatter out of Villeneuve did it. And now Nexus has this one out on a platter if he can find the angle, but it's going to be tough. It's too late though. The tank's already down on the side of Nova. They lost one. They lost Crazy S's mech too early in the fight, but trade backs are still here. They're going to make Talon fight for it, and this does give Nova some more percentage on the point.
And this is where the trade backs, like you said, getting the extra percentage is going to be very important for the future Nova fights, and also the fact that extra getting trades is going to slow down the capture rate for Talon Esports, now only just flipping it back around. A Weak and Blue both have the Graviton Surges. We've now seen a couple of grabs being eaten as well, so these next couple is going to be very important, looking at both the Divas players to see how they position around that.
Both teams very nearly even in terms of ultimates. It's Akila closer to the rally that could well just be the difference maker here, unless someone just gets straight fragged out.
Nexus got to watch that HP as well. We've seen a lot happen with that, and here comes that grab.
Straight in. Crazy's not able to stop it. Gagora only gets one with the self-destruct, but that one might be enough. How will Nova be able to answer back? They don't have those defensive ultimates. There's their own grab, though. They can't follow it up with a self. No, there it is. Try to get in with it, but blocked out as a Weak even finds a kill despite the pressure from Nova. And this is the fight that Talon sorely needed. Again, talking about momentum shifts as they take the lead on the point.
And this is usually where you can look at these kind kind of fights and say the person, or rather the team, that presses the trigger first and has the initiative usually comes out on top. Nova Esports used both the support ultimates just to try and survive against that Graviton Surge. Lost Nexus anyway, tried to play it 5 versus 6 with their own Grav, wasn't good enough unfortunately.
Only the rally out of 1. That's all they've got to play with until Nexus gets that Shatter. Talon, on the other hand, far healthier at the top of this fight. Committing the Earth Shatter, and it's a decent one. They scoop up Restia and Nexus, charging onto 1. Villain absolutely steamrolling that last fight. Almost no contest. I've got to compliment how close a lot of those fights came, but Talon ultimately taking out both points for the win.
Yeah, and it wasn't super one-sided there. You did see Nova Esports winning a decent amount of fights, but it was Talon edging them out ever just so slightly. And where they do edge Nova out is in the decision-making, in the fact that they are able to pull the trigger a little bit quicker. The initiative is certainly there. They're able to grab first. They're able to shatter first. They're able to get resources out of Nova Esports early and then punish them later on.
I do have to say, though, after the first map, I did say I would like to see Nova get that sort of momentum shift in their favor, like what Talon got on Downtown in the first map. And they did actually do that. Talon then got one back, which is ultimately what allowed them to take that map out and secure the win. But again, we're talking about the closeness of these two teams. I have to say, that did come reasonably close when you consider this is returning champion against, on paper, a team that got relegated.
And we do expect Talon to be the slightly better team here. When we look at the group overall, in terms of expectations, probably you'd say on paper, before we see all the games, they should be looking to be number 1 in this group. And again, the caveat here is that we haven't seen all the teams play, specifically the new ones, so they might be able to challenge Talon, but Talon do come in as returning champions, something that is quite rare for the Pacific region. We haven't had a back-to-back or even a repeat champion yet in the history of this region, including the OPC era.
And what's interesting about this as well, that's worth bringing up here, we'll go more into this later on, I'd say as well, but we also, I say for the first time, don't have a team coming out of trials that looks like a Royal Rotor. That's actually been a bit of a trend in PAC, is there's been a team that at the very least has had the potential to be a Royal Rotor that's qualifying and then winning the season immediately afterwards. It was nearly Cyclops Athlete Gaming last season. Now there is no team that looks like that. There could still be one that surprises us, but there's no one that you could pin from the start.
The thing is, we had so many last season, the title changed hands every so often between Monster Shield Korea and then EXL, then Cyclops Athlete Gaming on the other side. We had a plethora of teams coming through from trials or new teams coming into the region for the first time, maybe even rookie teams that we said, this could be a grand finalist team, this could be a championship team. This time around, not too soon. And again, the caveat is we haven't seen everybody play. Minds could be changed here, but until that happens, it does look like a Talon first place in A. It does look like a Hong Kong Attitude first place in B, and that could be your grand finals. But right now, those teams, first of all, the two that you'd expect to be coming out ahead, need to prove themselves once again against a new competition. And for the new competition, they need to prove themselves on the biggest stage, potentially, that they've played yet.
And I mean, to speak to that as well, more relevant to this matchup specifically, if we're looking at what we maybe expect out of this group, just based on the past, we do expect Talon likely to be at the top there, probably followed by Xavier, again, just based on past results, which is why I'd say it's important for Nova here, even if they are going to lose these maps. And I'm not going to count them out yet either, for what it's worth. We're only 1 map deep here, and it was a close one at that. But if they are going to lose them, they want them all to be close, because that says potentially good things about later playing up against Xavier, who is a team that they really need to beat if they actually want to better their last season result.
And if we're assuming Talon Esports is going to be the team to beat in this group, then for Nova Esports, they need to be kind of taking maps here, trading maps here, if not outright winning against Talon. The first week might be their best week to do so. Teams might be coming in fresh. Teams might be coming in from a break. It's a little bit hard to tell how much practice or how much preparation teams have put in to get to the stage in the first week. We've seen, I think, a decent amount of upsets in week 1s. If you go back to season 2, Cyclops Athlete Gaming beat Blank in week 1. So a lot of these week 1s, things can swing quite heavily.
Well, we'll be coming up on a hybrid next, which does change things up a little, because of course one of the things that keeps control relatively even, as we were seeing there, especially with the Goats v Goats, is how the momentum changes depending on ultimate advantage. With hybrid, it's that far more linear momentum engine that teams need to be establishing, either on the offense or the defense. So this is where we're really going to get a test of that. Talon, This is something I would say they got better and better at as last season went on. Nova themselves did also get better at it, so I think this will be an interesting test, more of the defense of these two teams than of the offense.
The other thing to remember is we have Numbani in the map pool now for the first time in I think a very long time. I don't remember casting Numbani for a while now. And what's interesting about that map is in preparation, when I've looked at scrims, when I looked at matches from the other regions, when you see Numbani specifically on point A and also point B, is the 3-3 GOATS composition isn't your typical comp on especially those points. So you need flexibility, I think, this season more than ever. You've had metas in the past where if you're a one-trick dive team, that's it. You can play that the entire game, the same comp you want, and you can win everything. You've seen, I think last season was definitely more GOATS favored. You had a lot more maps that were GOATS favored. This time around, because there's maps like Numbani in the pool, you need to be a little bit more flexible and going back to those traditional DPSs, having the Widowmakers, having the Genjis, a Doomfist and Sombra is going to be really good here as well. So teams that really do have a good Doomfist player, I'm looking at Lynx TH here with Bello back on the lineup, that's going to be really big.
Oh, Bellows Doomfist. But yeah, you're completely right there. And funny you mentioned that. It is going to be Numbani that we're going to for this next match between these two teams. That's going to be Nova's pick. And again, I would like to think that that speaks to a bit of flexibility. I'm almost half expecting the Control is going to be one of the only places we see GOATs throughout the season. I'm not saying it'll be the only, but I think in terms of like how much we're going to see GOATs off Control, I think we'll actually see quite a variety. I mean, just speaking of the players that are coming back, that are returning, a lot of really strong DPSs that you definitely want to be playing around if you can. If you got that on your lineup, make the most of it.
That's why I want to speak to Talon, because they actually have the 3 returning DPSs a week, TYG and also Aquila renamed from Bazius. Between the 3 of them, they kind of have all the DPS positions locked up, and that's including the Zarias and the Brigidas that you might have to play if you're going to go for that 3-3 again for the GOATs, which is always an option that you have to have in the back pocket. But we have seen last season on maps like Temple of Anubis, which isn't in the map pool this time around, but the history check is still there in terms of the fact that you look at Talon Esports, they were willing to run all 3 DPS players at the same time in specific triple DPS compositions, and they were one of the few teams that could make that work and really have the confidence to do that because they have 3 talented DPS players.
It's interesting. I like you said, it speaks to that flexibility, and I also mentioned I like to think that the fact that it's Nova picking this map also speaks to their potential flexibility. I'm curious, therefore, to see which of those two things comes out the better, because the GOATS v GOATS was relatively even. This is where I could see Talon coming in here as the favorite, really showing. So right, it's been too long since I've been to Numbani, since I've disembarked from my airplane, seen the ruined arrivals lounge, and stepped on out to the streets.
First thing I want to mention here on the Talon Esports side, we did mention they have 3 DPS players, and so they have now made some adjustments. They had a substitution in here, TYG coming in as a hit scan play in the place of Aquila, who stepped up for now. So Soldier and Sombra on this defense. Soldier we've seen, well, you should expect to see a decent amount of on this A defense. Sombra, though, that's a decent little trick that we'll see how that goes.
And Nova, a bit of an old classic on the offense here on Numbani, going to be taking the Pharah. This is, of course, the new Pharah, so slightly less spread, but slightly increased damage on direct hits. And
well, fire attack rate, same damage.
Yeah, we'll see. Sorry, that is the correct. At any rate, Restia is the one taking the hurt, but they have forced a weak down onto some lower ground. He's a little bit further back. They may be able to make the most of that and force TYG back as well.
Which is super strong for positioning. Note that Nova didn't really use much in terms of resources to force that to happen. Already Talon Esports have to play from the ground. The damage is still good, though.
That's quite big. Getting that mech out hurts Nova's ability to contest high ground. Talon, luckily for Nova, are mostly off the high ground, and they've still got one in the skies, keeping things
Nano's coming up
for them. This is going to be big for them now as Talon are forced into this position. Can Nova make the most of Talon having to commit to the point? Crazy S nearly back in the mech. There he goes, but Blue does drop down in that time, which means no rally. Aside from that, the Visor finds Restia as well. That's big, and despite those ultimates nearly coming up from Nova, just not quite quick enough, and Talon will push them back off the point.
And this is where the the unfortunate thing for Nova's attack begins to really settle in, losing their Diva player, losing Crazy as very early on, despite pushing Talon Esports off. Now I said the damage was still good. A week with the Soldier, then you have Persia coming in, Discord Orb and the Diva as well. That's going to really do a lot of work to get that early initial D-Mech. Once the D-Mech is gone, you play your Nano Boost rather, and then you play your Tactical Visor. There's just no Matrix to counter any of that.
Rally out from blue. Gives them a bit of an opening in the fight. There's the EMP straight down. TYG takes a bit of hurt, but the follow-up comes in. Nova, not quite able to back up without casualties. Nexus does drop. That's good for Talon. That just buys them a bit more time on the defense.
Not huge amount of losses for Nova either. Just Nexus down isn't going to be the biggest cost for them. They've already got 2 ticks on the point as well, so they know they just need one good concerted push to get that last 33%, and they only have to regroup waiting for 1 member. That's not a bad loss at all for Nova this fight.
Nova still at that barrage. They're still looking for the way in. They're respecting the defense matrix. One needs to find a good angle for it.
He's low.
Oh, nicely done by Gagora, following up on that. And this is a fight that Nova really wanted to commit big on. Now they need to decide whether or not they want to do it. A week gets dropped though, and Oyo could go in for a res. In fact, does commit, has popped the Valkyrie. Nova want this. Villeneuve forced to pop the Primal Rage with the Nano running, but now the Primal Rage running out and the Nano as well. Run out one, looking for an angle on the backside.
He needs to find a weak.
Hasn't found it yet. Oh, that's huge onto Haru and TYG, just as Gagora was looking the other way. Excellent execution out of one, and that's going to be the payload secured for Nova.
And that's a decent trade from Nova Esports as well, despite losing one so quickly. He got res back in, but the Talon Esports members are weak. He had to run back from spawn. You lose so much of the damage from the Soldier when you just have the supports there, when you just have the Sombra there. No one can really stop the Pharah as she goes in for that rocket barrage, and a weak certainly not in position to take her down.
Very nicely done on the whole, and now we see how that momentum plays out for Nova, making a couple of swaps up here, moving more towards a GOATS composition, interestingly enough. Talon, though, sticking to their guns.
Which they got plenty of.
Yeah.
Tactical Visor back online as well. Looking back at Crazy S. See how he wants to counter this one out. When you do have the Tactical Visor on, note the armor on the Nova Esports side. That's going to reduce a decent amount of that damage.
A week taking some hurt, and unfortunately that healing pad not enough to keep them topped up. Had to just turn tail.
EMP available.
Now they can set up in a new position. Need to stop this cart somehow.
You need to watch where TYG wants to approach from. This should be the EMP now, but they got low members.
Yeah, right on top of them, but the low members, it's safe, it's fine. Gagora could pop the self-destruct, and the follow-up has been nice and quick. Excellent execution on the defense from Talon. Just waiting for the right time to strike, not getting overzealous, and ensuring that they didn't lose members as Nova made the approach.
Patience is the virtue here, but with that patience, they all watered with a lot more kills. A much bigger cleanup here. Gagora loses his mech, but that's the only... I was going to say the only casualty, but TYG goes down as well. Importantly though, because they waited for a better EMP, this time around they collected way more kills and punished Nova Esports much harder than the previous EMP we saw.
That being said, Gagora's still out of the mech. TYG has made a swap up. There is a big window here for one if they can find this. At the very least, they definitely regain possession of the carts.
Well, the flank from
now
one's really important.
Talon coming for a contest. Gagora just barely getting back in the mech. Villeneuve does get found down on the side, now starts to play Disrupt as Crazy S throws his ultimate forward. TYG going to block it, they are fine. They do not combo it up with the grab, and the grab does not get followed up on as Persia pops Transcendence. Now Sound Barrier from Haru as Nova with their own Transcendence. Both teams trading ultimates now. It's Restia, the only one with an ultimate still available. They make hay though while the sun's shining. That's Persia, that's Villeneuve, and this is the fight starting to slide the way of Nova.
The stall options there for Talon Esports were pretty significant, but this time around, with the fact that Nova Esports were able to push in with the self-destruct, no, it didn't catch anyone, but it did give them the space to work with the Graviton Surge. Didn't quite kill anyone inside that either. Did force out a Transcendence, then played with their both double support ultimates, waiting for a week to try and get that Tactical Visor. He's not going to get it at all. He's going to change onto the Zarya.
I do like this change. It makes sense. They do just kind of need to match this composition, but they now do so with an ultimate disadvantage, at least in terms of the total charge.
Well, Rally's the only thing that Talon can really play with here, and they need to get aggressive while this is happening. Certainly they've got to do so before the grab from one comes down. With the advantage of the Nexus, this should be a winning fight.
Yeah, they're going to be able to pop Crazy S here if he isn't careful. Has just turned tail to run. I like the Talon are pushing this advantage here. They're careful to not overextend as well. That was exactly what they needed on the defense.
Time now becomes important for Nova Esports, the attacking team. The 2-minute mark now we've just passed. Ultimates are starting to come up online as well. Specifically, we are still looking at that Graviton Surge that was built in that last fight, but the opportunities are starting to run low. We've got a couple fights left for Nova before they're held.
Oh, Villeneuve, though, doesn't turn tail in time.
Eden.
The grab gets eaten, though. That's a big shift in gears here for Talon on the defense, because Villeneuve is about to respawn. They back up and give some space. Now with Villeneuve back, they recommit with Persia's Transcendence. Nova looking for a way to answer. They don't have those high-impact ultimates, and a weak is coming up on a grab here. They need to be careful. His grab goes in, catches the members. They throw that forward, the self-destruct. Crazy S, though, is the one who gets the connection, and it's still Talon on the back foot, despite the combos, despite the ultimates that they've had at their disposal. Nova are outvaluing, they're out-fragging, they've got the numbers on the point, and all the ultimates from Talon are gone. Look at Nova go over the line. Beautifully done.
If that wasn't enough, we also did have one at 92%, so had that fight gone on for a little bit longer, you do see that secondary grab. You do also have to compliment Nova the fact that we saw what was basically a bit of a failure of that grab directly into the defensive matrix. Also, great plays from Gogora to be able to catch that one out. But the fact that Nova Esports then, on the follow-up plays, you had the grab coming up from a weak onto Nova, self-destructs on both sides, and Crazy S as the one on what you could say is probably the team at the disadvantage in that position to collect himself a double kill. That is exactly the kind of play you need to be able to swing the fight back in your favor. Talon Esports, no trades coming up from them. If Talon Esports made any sort of even trades, collect 1 or 2 kills themselves, maybe they can leverage that reinforcement advantage, that respawn advantage to take control of that point C again. But it didn't happen. It's going to result in a cap, notably above 1 minute.
Man, I almost want to, I want to get some kind of slow-mo replay. I want to pour over how they shielded that self-destruct from Gogora. It looked like, just with where the Reinhardt shield from Nexus was, that it was physically impossible for everyone to live. And yet here we are. Nova really handled that beautifully. Now, with a minute in the time bank, if we do get to there, I said I felt it was the defense that was going to be the measure of meter for these two teams. Let's see if Nova can back that up now with a stronger defense than what Talon could field.
They're going to have to play this a little differently as well. We look at the selections in terms of compositions, very similar to what Talon Esports ran, but notably it's going to be a Brigida for one instead of the expected or somewhat expected Soldier 76 that we did see out of Talon Esports. Because they're only running 1 DPS here, a lot of pressure for Blue to get the damage done, a lot of pressure overall from the supports to get more damage in there, because otherwise they're going to find a lack of ability to get the Talon members down.
Nice scouting from Blue, but in kind, Weak does know that Blue is here. They know that this is the composition Nova are running on the defense. And wow, TYG finds a quick connect onto Nexus. Trade back though, that's very important here for Nova.
And protecting a weak is going to be the win condition they're looking for. You can already see he's got himself an armor pack, was at additional armor there from the beginner player. They need to make additional trades here. This is one of the few points of a map where actually defenders have a respawn advantage.
Rotating around now, looking to take some high ground and box Nova in on this low ground.
Watch the EMP charge.
We've also got some fire grenade angles here if Talon stay 2 grouped up in these hallways. So now committing Villeneuve to the point, just weaving these members in and out. Haru and Gogora now down on the ground.
Taking this high ground is so good for a weak, as you can see the amount of resources being poured into him. This is what we like to call the super Kree comp. It's 1 DPS, but it's McCree with the Deadeye out now. Can he find something?
Would you look at the time, and so fast as well. But Crazy S has lost his mech. Nexus takes some big chunks, even though they didn't connect on that Deadeye. They've managed to get the zoning in there, and now Nova, without those tanks, can't contest here in spite of having the EMP. It's worth preserving this for a future fight, but this point is as good as gone to Talon.
And this is the problem here. Nova Esports actually came up on the EMP at the right time, but they needed to find an opportunity to use it. Unfortunately, because the Deadeye was being channeled, Nova lost a bit of confidence there. We're losing members quite quickly as well. The other thing I want to speak to about this composition that Talon Esports are running is the fact they catch Nexus, the Winston play on Nova, so quickly. A shield bash followed up by a flashbang. That's a dead Winston. That's a double stun. Not a lot you can do about that.
And that is one combination you do have to respect here from Talon. The amount of damage they can pour into a tank if they get double stunned. You get the Discord on, you get some shots out of the McCree.
Here we go.
Dropped quickly, but here's going to be the EMP commit. Persia's already low at the top of the fight. That's Transcendence Force for EMP. That is very big.
That's exactly the kind of plays Nova need here. Just really threatening to use the EMP, the threat of the EMP, so much so that the Transcendence came on through. Now Haru's got to be the one to put the shoulders of the team, the defense on top of him, because now if he doesn't keep himself safe from the EMP, there's not going to be a sound barrier. That could be a team wipe.
Blue did have to respect TYG, but there goes the EMP. Sound barrier able to counter it out, but it's Villeneuve the first casualty. As Oyo has been able to pop a Transcendence. Nexus trapping some members up in this room. Might be able to find Persia. And they're back into the spawn, but they do drop TYG. So Nova have got possession of the cart, and it is quite far forward.
And so one ultimate versus one ultimate trade there, and I think for Talon Esports, the goal was use the sound barrier, try and back out any members that you can. The sound barrier not going to be quite as effective as the Transcendence to directly counter out that EMP play. You saw Villeneuve, he died without using Primal Rage. He was hacked up by the EMP. No opportunity for Gogora either, but for Talon Esports, Deadeye, opportunities here.
Oh, what a sleep! Stops the Deadeye, then gets hacked out. A weak just has to back it up. The self-destruct forward gives Talon some breathing room, but that's out of the picture now. TYG still taking hurt. Nice catch around the side though with the flashbang. They drop Blue. That eases the pressure on these back lines. Self-destruct forward finds nothing, and Talon should be able to start pushing Nova back here. It's going to be finding rest here. Nexus is low, doesn't go down, but he's backed off. One does go down, and now again, cart belongs to Talon.
I gotta say, the discipline here from Persia is quite something to behold. He had two tank members that were below 50% HP, a weak going very low as well. Chose to hold that Transcendence. They end up winning the fight, noting that they had a 6v4 advantage through the kills. They're able to push on through and now save some of these ultimates for a future fight where Nova Esports now have used resources waiting for their Transcendence. Oyo's only just respawned. The cart rather is reaching that second point, still with 2 minutes and 30 to go.
This is what Nova get, though, for getting that earlier defense as they buy a second one here. However, already going well for Talon. No, they lose Villeneuve. They nearly finish Nexus,
we need
not
support
quite in time. This is where Persia's got to commit. Surely a week with the Deadeye. Again, fishing, but only finds Crazy S's mech. Nova have good possession of the ground here. They force a week down onto the floor. Defensive ultimates out from Talon as well as they try and push back onto the cart, but they've been forced backwards. Villeneuve only just rejoining as Haru goes down, and now it's Nexus and one with ultimates. Nova should just be able to start pushing Talon back. They have again reclaimed the cart on the defense.
This is where Talon Esports just waited a little bit too long. The 5v6 was a lot more difficult to win from. The fact that they waited to use the Transcendence for so long, then the sound barrier afterwards, they had the support ultimates, they used them on 5, but the issue with 5 is they don't quite have the damage, they don't quite have the ability to capitalize. So for Nova Esports, trade damage, trade kills, they're able to climb themselves back in, take control of the card and the point, and time is running out for Talon Esports to actually cap now.
This is that defense I said Nova needed to have. They've got some good tools at their disposal here as well. That's a Primal Rage Force from Villeneuve. Nexus chooses to match here. Oh, that's another grab that gets eaten. Gogora is on fire with stopping these up from Blue. That being said, Talon are not out of the woods yet because they don't have ultimates of their own to answer with just yet. A week under pressure, but stays alive, and they did survive the self-destruct from Crazy S. Now it's just defensive tools. Both Persia and Oyo force the pop Transcendence. Talon nearly coming up on a grab.
Watch the
this ought
Dyers.
to be what changes the fight around, but Blue's nearly got one of his own for the second time in this fight. That's so huge. A week looking for the angle, but they've been forced backwards.
Should be coming out any moment now. Both of these players in Talon Esports probably not expecting the grab from Blue so quickly if he chooses to use it now.
There's the recommit. They're trying to pop Crazy S's mech first, but they didn't expect Blue's Transcendence, but they find a weak in it. Persia gets traded, or trades one back rather, on Nexus. It's a little bit messy, but finding a weak there was the crucial one, and I believe his ultimate may have even got eaten by Crazy S as well. This is so big for Nova at a big advantage. Persia will have a Transcendence here. That's going to be important as they stall for a week to rejoin. One gets popped, and now Talon looking like they've just barely got the upper hand in this fight. But Blue, he's coming
this
up
could be a
on
hold.
another Transcendence, or another Graviton Surge. What are these ultimates even called? They've found Villeneuve. One's going to go back onto the Doofus to get in with the connect, with the commit. The third Transcendence, oh my god, I keep calling it that. It's a Graviton Surge. It's 3 in a row from Blue. He is absolutely on fire as Nova start cleaning up the kills left, right, and center. It is indeed going to be a full hold. Nova are going to even up our series.
He's not going to be playing Zenyatta, but he will transcend in this game regardless. 3 Graviton Surges in the space of 1 life. Now look, one of them to get eaten out, we will say for Gogora, well played on his side. But the thing is, because he didn't go down, and there were quite a few times there were certain members, you got to say, probably went down at inopportune times. I had to look at the last fight and say Nexus, as the main tank, as the Winston on the Nova side, died at about 98% to the Primal Rage, and I thought this could be the nail in the coffin. Villeneuve's going to have the advantage here on the Primal. They got to be able to make some dives happen. They got to find the kills, but it was just not the case for Talon Esports. Nexus returns. Blue comes out with another grab. Heaps of support ultimates on both sides as well. Nobody was dying as is expected in Goats versus Goats. But it is going to be the team that had the Zarya life, that had the Zarya charging up the ults, and you can say that even if you weren't hitting some of them, because the quantity of ults you were charging was so high, I mean, it's just a numbers game.
And that's the thing as well with the Zarya in that situation, because you're taking all those shots, right? That was just a protracted engagement. There was no backing off of the gas pedal on the side of Talon, which went Blue at high charge. Stayed on high charge. The fight never stopped long enough for the charge to go down. He was still able to put bubbles on people, keep himself within the 80 to 100 range, which is why he was getting those graviton sentences so frequently. Whatever. Gravascendance. I don't know what was going on there. But it's called a graviton surge. Everyone knows that, especially me. But the main thing is you've really got to credit Nova for that. I said it was going to be the defense that would make it for these teams, not necessarily the offense. Both teams' offenses did feel good, I've got to say, but Nova really pulling it out on the defense.
And specifically on this map, it's not something we saw on Busan, where for Busan it was Talon Esports able to make quicker decisions, able to capitalize on those decisions a lot more effectively. But going into Numbani, when you saw some of the clutch moments, I want to say that Nova Esports won through some of these clutch moments. You got to go back to their own offense, especially on point C. Craziest with the counter self-destruct, collecting himself 2 kills when Gagora couldn't get a single one, when Gagora had the Graviton Surge set up, and while Craziest didn't for Nova Esports, that was a cap out, but that was actually them getting onto point C in the first place, which is something that Talon Esports really struggled to do, and they had the momentum to do so. They had the kind of players there, the card moving, they just needed to get past certain members, and it's the resilience coming up from Nova Esports, the fact that they just wouldn't back down, despite being, I would say, in multiple positions where it looked like on paper they should be expected to lose here. They got Winston's going down at 98%, not ideal, things not going their way, Graviton Surges not connecting, being eaten by defensive matrix. So many things, small things that do go wrong, but they come out through anyway.
And you've got to really consider, one of the defining things was how that point A fight played out. Because they were able to get that one extra defense on the B stretch, because of how they lost point A, Nova just had more in the tank. Absolute credit to them. So we go into the break all tied up.
Yep, and with that, we're going to come back very soon in roughly about 10 minutes. It's 101 apiece. When we do come back, though, we'll find out who's going to take the lead. Is it going to be Nova? Is it going to be Talon? Find out after this.